1. I just remembered this story. I'm 18 and due to leave for BMT next Tuesday. This series of events started in my sophomore year of high school, and it makes my blood boil still. In my second term of my 10th grade year, I had to take health. I never took it in 9th grade. I sat alone for the first few weeks. I had friends in the class, but the table was taken up with other people. Soon 2 kids sat at the table behind me, and I could tell they were different. I'm not one to be mean. I hate to hurt people's feelings, so I was nice to them. We usually talked about video games. Before I get too into this, these 2 were high-functioning, and knew rights and wrongs. Last names are used. Clark had started sitting next to me during class. It was nice to have someone to talk to, and I was nice to him. However, it got to the point where he was becoming a distraction during class. So I would gather my things and sit on the floor next to the table my friend sat at, and do my work. This happened a few more times before that became my actual go-to sitting spot. Clark's friend, Hunt, would come over to me at least once a week and tell me that Clark wanted me to sit next to him, to which I would always politely decline. Around midterms, he began following me to my classes. We would pass each other in the hall, and he would turn around to follow me. I always stuck out around the school, and one day, he was making a phone call to someone and loudly announced it was him, saying he was pissed about something. At this point, I had enough and told one of the staff, Coach Johnson, who helped me with all this. He talked to Clark's mum, and she said to only say hi and ignore him, and he'll go away. So that's what I did. He came up to me a few days later to tell me that he liked me. I didn't want to hurt his feelings, so I made the mistake of saying, I don't know what to say. I'm flattered, so thank you. And he kept following me to my next class, proceeding to tell me he has autism. I nodded politely and just went to class. I told the coach, and he talked to his mum again, who said to just ignore him completely. So I did. About a month went by with no issues. In June, the school holds a family picnic. I was in the pool and a game of water volleyball was going on, and Clark was there. The ball splashed near me. He asked me to give him the ball. Still ignoring him, I tossed it to Hunt, who was there with him, and went back to swimming with my friends. Later, after the senior's last day, he spoke to me in the hall. You're gonna get what's coming to you, he said. He repeated it 3 times as I walked by, before finally I yelled at him, telling him to shut the fuck up. It was the weekend before the last week of school, and I was checking my Facebook. I saw that Clark had messaged me. Hey bitch, I saw you in the hall today. I know you want this, D. I'ma shove mine in you. Can't wait, you're gonna get what's coming to you, bitch. The account was deleted shortly after. And the next day, me, my mom, and my dad went to the principal to have her help. We showed her the messages and spent a while in there. The coach was on the phone with his mum, who said they were just discussing what they were learning in health. She just kept making excuses, which infuriated my parents. And then she had the coach ask my mum if she wanted to talk over coffee. After that, Clark was expelled, and he posted how much of a bitch I was on Facebook after I blocked him. Then his family moved up to Canada. I cannot hold grudges to save my life, and my boyfriend says that my only flaw is that I forgive too easily. Anyway, it's a year or 2 now, and it's my senior year. I rarely ever go on Twitter, but I see he followed me and sent me a message. I apologize for taking so long, as I never go on Twitter. It was a normal conversation after that. Eventually, he sent me a new friend request on Facebook. I accepted, and we talked a bit. In my profile picture, I was wearing a Wonder Woman Bombshells outfit from Hot Topic. This is how the messages went. Clark, I love your picture. Me, thank you. Clark, those curves though. Are you still a virgin? You look like you give it away. Me, yes, I am. That's not something you ask a girl. Clark, sorry. The topic switches to basketball, which I could care less for. But, oh well. Stupidly, I didn't delete him. The next day, he went on to tell me he was going to pull all the girls in college and had said, I got suspended for slapping a girl's ass today. I'm a beast. I told him off for it. A few days later, he said he did it again. Clark, I know you're going to be mad, but I slapped another girl's butt. Me, what the hell? You know how wrong that is. Clark, can't help it. I've been obsessed since 9th grade. I blocked him after that. You should pray I don't see him again. 2. In 2012, I was living in Rome for the summer. My apartment was very close to the Colosseum, but I was working as an undergraduate visiting researcher at the university. Every day I would walk to and from work, which took about 35 to 40 minutes. One evening I decided to take an alternative route that would shave off some time from my walk. Normally, I would have went through the main termini, where all the people and shops are. The new route, however, had me cross the tracks farther down from the actual station. As I got closer to the tracks, I noticed the area began to look really rough, and that there were a lot of homeless people hanging around. I power walked through it and just avoided eye contact with everyone, and eventually reached a small traffic tunnel. About halfway through, I felt someone come up behind me. He smelled terrible, and was almost certainly foreign, as his Italian had a very, very thick accent, and he didn't look Italian. My Italian also wasn't very good at that point, and I couldn't really understand what he was saying, so I said, Mi dispiace, non parlo italiano. The guy still wouldn't stop talking to me, even though he knew I couldn't understand what he was saying. I just assumed he really wanted money or something, but would go away on his own when he figured out I wasn't going to give him any. We reached the end of the tunnel, and I was doing my best to just ignore him. I looked around and noticed the streets were abandoned, even though it was just after rush hour. I turned to him at some point and said, Basta! Stop, that's enough. He just kept following me and talking. I had begun to get nervous, but because he wasn't doing anything really threatening, I wasn't overly worried. When I reached a small stoplight, though, the guy's hand reached down and tugged at the bottom of my dress, and sort of started to lift it. At this point, I felt threatened and swung my bag at him, which made him stagger a little. It was my laptop bag and was pretty heavy. It was enough for me to take off in a bit of a sprint. However, I noticed when I looked back the guy was still following me, just now at a small distance. I kept jogging until I finally reached a small grocery store and ran inside. The guy was right at my heels. At this point, he was directly behind my back, so close I could feel his body heat. He then started reaching for my elbow like he was going to drag me out of the store. I shoved him off again and ran up to 2 other girls who were by the produce and seemed to be around my age, asking if they spoke English. When they said yes, I motioned to the guy behind me and told them the man had been following me since the train tracks. The girls' faces turned pretty serious at that point, and they started speaking rapidly to the guy in Italian. Then they turned back to me and asked whether I knew him, and told me that he was saying he was my boyfriend, and we had just been in a fight, and I was lying. I told them I had never met him before and had no idea who he was. I'd say the fact that he couldn't speak English, and that my Italian was limited to telling people I couldn't speak Italian, and asking for the bathroom, made them certain there was little way the guy actually knew me. One of the girls then left to get the manager, who promptly threw the man out and told me he was watching the monitors to make sure he went away. After the manager realized the man wouldn't go away, and having him attempt to re-enter the store about half an hour later, he called the police. The police arrived and I told them my story. By that point, the guy seemed to have finally laughed, probably scared off when he saw the police coming. The manager then gave me a ride back to my apartment so that the guy couldn't follow me, just in case he was still lurking around. Luckily, that was the end of that, and I never walked past the train tracks again. I think I got lucky to have found this store, but it still taught me a very valuable lesson about being careful about the areas you venture into in new cities. Now I ask the locals for areas to avoid, instead of wandering around foreign cities on my own. 3. I met Michael when I was a super insecure 18-year-old. We met on a shitty dating app, chatted for a few days, and then met up for a date a week or so after knowing each other. The date went well, and we became an item almost immediately after. So young. So naive. Now, when I was 18, I was a pretty timid girl, with very low self-esteem, and was desperate for a boyfriend because I had never had one. Michael would lie, and lie some more. When I first met him, he told me he was 19, but on our first date, he told me he was actually 18. And about a month into our 2-month relationship, so long, he told me he was actually 23. I asked to see his ID and he refused to show me, so I just accepted that my now boyfriend was 23. He lied about his father being dead. He lied about his last name. And he lied about his ethnicity on multiple occasions. I just ignored all the red flags because a guy actually wanted me. Anywho, one night shit hit the fan. Michael and I were hanging out around his neighborhood, and I needed to charge my phone. He took it inside his house to charge it for me, while I waited for him outside. We walked around for maybe an hour when I decided I should start heading home and asked if he could get my phone for me. He comes back with my phone and I have a shitload of missed calls and texts from my best friend, my mother, and one of my brothers. I thought someone had died, and I called my mother and she didn't seem too worried. Just asked where I was and said everyone's been trying to contact me. I called my bestie and asked her what was up, and she told me that someone was posting some photos on my Instagram. Nudes that I took from Michael and forgot to delete off of my phone. She panicked and assumed someone had taken me or something because she knew I'd never post pictures like that on Instagram. So she called my mom and my brother to ask if they knew where I was, which they didn't because no one knew about Michael. I sign into Insta, I see the pics and freak out. I walk back up to Michael's door and ask him if his cousin is the one who posted the pics on my IG, and Michael is very clearly pretending to be confused. And his cousin comes to the door, shouts some insult that I can't remember, and shuts the door on my face. At that point, I feel super violated and just wanted to go home and cry. So I called up my older brother and he picked me up and took me home. Needless to say, I dumped Michael after that. And he was cool about it and accepted it like any normal person would. Joke. I ignored every text and call he sent me. I would block a number and 5 minutes later I'd get another text from a new number. In total, I ended up blocking 10 random numbers. All him. All the same text. I miss you. This was before you were able to easily block someone on the iPhone. So I had to call my carrier each time and give the rep the number I wanted to block. 10 numbers was their limit. One day I unlock my phone and see that I have a text from yet another random number. This time it's a picture of him holding a gun and, "I'm going to find you, and I'm going to kill you if you don't respond." I wasn't really scared because he had no idea where I lived. So I just took a screen cap of the message just in case some shit went down. But after that the text stopped for months. I was working at a fast food place at the time, and when I closed, I would get home super late from work, sometimes 3 a.m. I worked in the city but did not live there. I would have to take a 30-minute ferry ride and another 30-minute bus to get home. One night I was getting off of the ferry and heading to my bus stop. I stopped in my tracks when I realized Michael was waiting for me inside of the ferry terminal. He was asking if we could just sit outside and talk about everything. F no, I was not doing that. but I didn't want him to follow me home, so I sped walked to my bus stop and called 911 before anything escalated. While I was waiting for the cops to show up, Michael was pacing back and forth in front of me, clearly pissed I called the cops, but not smart enough to leave before they arrived. He decided it would be a good idea to push me down on the ground at the exact moment the popo show up. The cops came. I told them the deal, I wrote a statement, and they made sure I got home safely. I never heard or saw Michael again, until a week ago. I'm a baker now, and I work very early mornings. Usually when I'm commuting that early, I'm surrounded by big construction workers who are also starting their day quite early. Anyway, I was walking to the train station and suddenly I hear a guy's voice through my music. I look up and see Michael grinning from ear to ear. It's been 4 years since we've last seen each other, and oh man, am I a different person, both inside and out. I take one earphone out, look him dead in the eyes, and say in a very serious, very cold tone, "If you ever touch me or talk to me again, I will slit your fucking throat." Then I skip away into the train station. And of course he follows because he obviously has a weird death wish. I head to the platform and notice that there are a handful of big and beefy construction workers waiting for the train. Since Michael is following me and I now have an audience, I decide I should make a big scene and maybe that'll scare him away. So I turn around and beeline it towards him and start shouting, "Are you fucking following me? I'm not the same weak-ass 18-year-old girl, Michael. I will end your fucking life." He stepped away, a little taken aback. I continue shouting, "I swear to God, if you follow me on this train, I will stab you in the fucking throat." I stepped onto the train and he attempts to follow me, but 2 very big and very beefy construction workers stand beside me and escort me onto the train while shooting daggers at Michael. I get onto the train with my new besties and we all laugh and joke about how fun it was to start our day with such drama. One of my 2 new buddies gets off at the next stop, and guess who enters our subway car at the next stop? You guessed it, Michael. Now he's keeping his distance and shouting at me from across the train. He sounds like a lunatic. He's going back and forth between calling me a stupid bitch and telling me he misses me so much. We dated for 2 months 4 years ago, buddy. And then he says, "You have to get off the train at some point." The entire time he was going off, I ignored him. But that comment infuriated me. The nerve of this asshole to think he could get away with harassing me and then threaten to follow me off the train? Nah, not today. Just a little side note. I carry a little pocket knife with me at all times because I live in a big city. And people suck. I calmly took the knife out of my bag and waved it at him from across the train and said, "Try me." I got up and moved to another car. He followed. I moved to another car and he followed again. At this point the train was stalled at the station, so I stepped out and asked an MTA employee to call the cops because I was being harassed, and she told me to find a train conductor. I walked back onto the car ready to go find a conductor, but I already see one arguing with Michael, telling him he has to get off the train. He refused, so the conductor called the cops. The cops come and I give them a very brief synopsis of what happened. The entire time the officer is speaking to me, his partner is speaking to Michael, and Michael is shouting at the officer to check my bag because that bitch put a knife to my throat. The officer that is speaking to me just smirks and asks jokingly if I pulled a knife on him, and I just smiled my innocent smile and say, "Officer, if I pulled a knife on him, you would know." He chuckles, and I'm just hoping he doesn't search my bag to find the knife and weed. The officer took my info down, and I wrote another statement and hopped on the next train and went to work. I'm 1,000,000% certain that I'll be running into Michael's psycho ass soon. Hopefully he stays away because I'm not going to be able to control my anger next time. And I will chop his dick off and feed it to the rats on the train track. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 121. Well, those bloody neighbours that were banging away the other day, banging away again while I'm trying to record this. I think I managed to minimise most of the noise, so this should be okay. I checked through it doesn't seem that bad. Just like everyone who keeps pointing out that the channel called True Scary Stories is, and still is, stealing my content. So I'll just say, as I have in the past few videos, check that you're on a channel called Hellfreezer. The address is King of the Cities, but the channel itself is called Hellfreezer. Okay, moving on from that. Just want to thank you all for the good feedback you left on the recent 30 Stories video. And thank you all again for the birthday wishes. I was kind of blown away by that. It really meant a lot to me. I'm just going to make it a short outro, but don't worry, longer outros will return in the future. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.